To our continuing series, Saving Detroit. And this morning, the judge considering Detroit's record $18 billion bankruptcy has some tough questions for Kevin Orr, the emergency manager charged with turning the Motor City's finances around. The judge wanted to know why the city doesn't just sell its $4.6 billion art collection to pay its creditors, most of whom have actually backed off their demands that the city swap its Van Goghs for money for their dough. Or pushed back on the idea that a one-time fix for the bankers and bondholders would benefit the city long term. But the bottom line is the deal is still not done. Meanwhile, Detroit's entrepreneurs are working their own plan to bring the city back. And we meet with people whose investments could turn the city of Detroit into a Rust Belt Silicon Valley. What was the impetus behind creating Detroit Labs?
We saw an opportunity. There's a ton of talent in the Detroit area, so we decided to build a company to make mobile apps.
Paul Glomsky is part of downtown Detroit's latest renaissance, aimed at turning a city decimated by the collapse of the auto industry into a high-tech and entertainment hub. 3 years ago, he co-founded Detroit Labs, a startup app developer housed in a former women's clothing store. It's got that industrial kind of feeling to it.
We started small in actually a space that was free. Like a lot of the buildings, when you look at these empty skyscrapers, we see opportunity. Just in the couple of years that we've been here building Detroit Labs, this block has been transformed.
Transformed by a building boom and a hiring spree. Metro Detroit's tech sector added more than 30,000 jobs in 2013. That's up 15% over the previous year, at a time when Silicon Valley saw a 4% decline. Is tech the way that you see Detroit coming back?
Tech is an interesting thing because it's one of these things that you can learn and you can build a company in a pretty fast kind of pace. So Detroit Labs, we started with 4 people 3 years ago. We're about to be 75 people.
Detroit's downtown tech boom has largely been funded by Dan Gilbert, founder of Quicken Loans and owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. This self-made billionaire has invested over $1 billion as part of his mission to remake downtown Detroit.
There's people now, for the first time in a long time, coming in from all over the country and even the world.
Gilbert started in 2011, paying bargain prices to buy abandoned buildings downtown. He then moved his own company, Quicken Loans, from the suburbs to the city, and convinced startup tech firms like Detroit Labs and Twitter to set up shop in the same space. Today, Gilbert's holdings include more than 60 Detroit properties, totaling over 9 million square feet of space and counting. Over the summer, his company bought the building that used to house the Detroit Free Press. He's also paying the city to widen a downtown freeway exit that goes directly into the struggling Greektown casino entertainment complex he's trying to revive. And he's using his own money to help fund the city's $140 million light rail expansion, a move that could eventually bring more residents and businesses back to downtown. For now, Detroit's comeback is leaning on tech.
There's over 100 technology companies with over 500 technology workers, and that's just on one block.
You can walk down the sidewalk right now, you see a lot of construction. Building after building after building, it's filled up. And it's filled up with creative, cool technology companies.
Is the school system prepared for something like this? Do you actually have the systems in place around you to organically build up talent, or are you going to wind up having to bring people from outside Detroit?
Well, we're open to both. We actually have great universities within Detroit and in the surrounding areas. And there's so much going on right now that if you have an interest in it, there are ways to get into it. For example, through our apprenticeship program.
Developer and Detroit native Rainey Hamilton sees the progress too. How have you seen this city change over the last, let's say, 10 years?
There are a lot more people here. The properties that Dan Gilbert has purchased for his businesses, and to renovate those properties and to put businesses in there, it's just created so much buzz on the street. Including
at 1515, the combination cafe and performance space where people come for coffee, music, or just to settle in with a good book. Owner Chris Jazik remembers what Detroit used to be.
It was the Paris of the Midwest. You could work in an auto plant, and if you got enough overtime, you had your own home on a street with a garage and a driveway and your car in it.
And sees what it could once again become.
If you look around, because of the history of Detroit, there's an incredible amount of great buildings that were built in the 20s and the 30s that now are recognized as treasures. we always had the buildings, and I felt that people would start coming down.
Both Hamilton and Glomsky believe Detroit's latest comeback has the right momentum.
There's a whole new interest in Detroit. So we're seeing a lot of young people moving in. A lot of people that may be empty nesters are moving back to the city. So it's really, really quite dynamic.
Why should Detroit be saved of all the cities?
I think the question to ask is, what's happening in Detroit that is truly amazing, and why is it that the opposite story tends to be told? Coming here and seeing what's happening, you wouldn't even ask that question. Detroit doesn't need to be saved. Detroit is flourishing.
And that wraps things up for the Reid Report. I'll see you back here next week at 2 p.m. Eastern.